people used to think of me as Jim the Marine, you know, and it gave me that sense of recognition. And yet, there was something still missing. I hear a lot of stories nowadays about people growing up in broken homes and things like that, but to be honest, my story doesn't start like that. You know, I grew up in a nice home. My mum and dad really loved me and looked after me. I had pretty much everything I needed. I started doing my A-level classes, and it was during that time that I started to get a bit more rebellious and started going off the rails a bit. And it was in one of my classes one time when my friend Dave just said to me, "Hey Jim, you'd make a good Marine. Why don't you go in for the Marines?" And it was something I never thought of before, but he just dropped that seed in my mind. After I finished my A-levels, I started doing a sports science degree. And it was during my time doing that I just started feeling unsatisfied with life. Deep within me, there was a desire to be recognised, a desire to be known as someone, and that dissatisfaction I had in university caused that seed that my friend planted about the Marines to come back to my mind. And I thought that would be a good way to be recognised as a Marine. In June 1999 was when I started my basic training with the Royal Marines, the longest military training apart from the Special Forces in the world, the 30 weeks basic training. Started right at the beginning, learn how to iron, and then learn how to look after our clothes. And then we went into the field and learned basic field craft, how to survive in the field. Moved on to weapons training, learning the different weapons. And then finally the commando tests, which if you completed, you would receive the coveted green beret. The final commando test was a 30-mile march across Dartmoor with full kit, which had to be completed in 8 hours. And I managed to pass that, and the pass out parade where my family came up to the training centre, and I received finally that thing I was looking for, the green beret. I was a Royal Marine. A bit like learning to drive a car, it wasn't until I'd actually received the green beret that I began to learn what it was like being a Marine. I had many different experiences. I remember in Norway when we did a thing called ice breaking drills, where they make you just ski into a frozen lake to simulate what it would be like falling into a frozen lake and having to get myself out with my ski poles. I remember in Norway when we were doing a night firing exercise, and it was so cold, it was -35, the barrel on the mortar that we was firing just sheared off at the bottom. Memories like that will stick with me for a long time. After having spent 4 years in the Marines and, like I said, a lot of memories, I decided to move on and leave the Marines and pursued a degree. I had the recognition that I wanted. Everyone knew that I was the guy who used to be in the Marines, and people used to, you know, ask me about what it used to be like. And it gave me that sense of recognition, you know, that I was somebody. And yet, as I was doing my degree, there was still an emptiness in my life. And I started asking bigger questions about life. Like, why am I here? You know, what's the point of life? And that was when I started going down the road of drinking and taking drugs to try and fill up that emptiness in my life, but none of those things worked. It was at that point in my life when things started getting pretty dark, trying to find my own way in life and just going about it completely the wrong way. I had a really good way of putting things I'd done wrong in the past to the back of my mind, but there came a point when they just wouldn't stay at the back of my mind anymore. I was seeing a girl at the time, and one day I had a phone call off her and she said, "James, I've become a Christian." And I remember saying to her, "There's nothing after this life. You just die, you're buried in the ground, and that's it, end of." And after I said those words to her, it was like I was It was like I was hit over the head with a sledgehammer. I just felt so bad that for the first time, even though I was living like it, I'd actually denied the existence of a God completely. I'd said, there's no God, you just die and that's it. So that night, the same night, I was just literally at the end of myself. I just didn't really know what to do anymore. I was at the bottom. And I just laid down on the floor in my house and I just said, God, if you're real, then I need you to show me that you're real. You know, other people are talking about you, but if you are real, can you show me? And I just typed in on Google just 3 words that was really just the cry of my heart. Who is God? And the first thing that came up was just these 3 words. God is love. And I read about someone who demonstrated, showed me how much he loved me more than anyone else ever did. And his name was Jesus. And I read about how he died on a cross to take the punishment for everything that I'd ever done wrong. All the stuff that I knew I was guilty of, all the stuff that I couldn't put to the back of my mind anymore, all the stuff that I knew really deep down that I deserved to be punished for. I learned that Jesus took my place on the cross because he loved me. And whereas before I was looking for recognition by becoming a Marine and having people talk about me, right there and then I knew that above all else I was loved by God, that God loved me and that he was willing to accept me if I'd come to him. And that night I just surrendered my life. I just surrendered my life. I said, I'm doing it my way and I've stuffed it up. God, will you have my life and take over? And that night I chose to follow Jesus and give my life to Jesus. I just knew that he was real. I knew that he was alive. I knew that he wasn't dead. And I learned after that he'd been raised from the dead after he died. Because he's alive, he was able to change loads of things in my life that I just couldn't change. I used to swear loads, and the next morning when I woke up it was crazy, but I just didn't swear anymore. I didn't try and stop myself. I just didn't. And I'm not saying I became perfect overnight like that, no way. But what I am saying is that he changed my life. And I'm not the person that I used to be. After I became a Christian, the next thing that just naturally happened was that I talked to my friends about what happened. And some of them thought I was joking. Some of them took the mickey out of me. Some of them called me like a Bible basher and stuff like that. But some of my friends really started to ask questions themselves, you know, about what had happened. From coming from a place like 6 years ago when, you know, I was in a dark place, to being here now where God has just blessed me with my beautiful wife Naomi and 2 kids, Benjamin and Jacob, that I would have never imagined that I'd be in this position like 6 years ago. I had the chance to see and do some amazing, exciting things, and yet through all of that I didn't find that thing that was missing until I met with God, and I realised that I don't need to get recognition from other people. I just need to be in a relationship with God and to just know him, to just know God. So much more exciting than zipping down a zip wire, than skiing across a barren plain, than jumping out of an aeroplane. All of that stuff, knowing God is better than that.